Ladies, gentlemen, Speakerhead Squad, what is going on? It is your boy Speakerhead, and welcome back to another video. Right off the bat, I'm going to mention if my voice sounds a little bit weird in this video, it's because I lost my voice a couple days ago and I'm still getting it back. But talking about Transformers, I really loved a lot of different flying Transformers throughout the original G1 series. One of my personal favorites out of all these flyers is going to be Powerglide. Maybe it was because of his unique voice by Michael Chain.
Will you shut up and listen? I gotta know why those goons were after you. Who are you?
Or maybe it was because of his unique alt mode of being an A-10 Thunderbolt fighter plane. Regardless, I always had a soft spot in my heart for Powerglide. Recently, Newage came out with their version of Powerglide, and I'm super excited to take a look at this guy. So like I said, today we're going to be taking a look at Newage Powerglide. But before we get into this video, if you enjoy any of this sort of content and want to see more of it, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. I made it a personal goal to reach 1,000 subscribers by 2024, and the support so far has been really awesome, so if you want to help me reach my goal, make sure to subscribe. Also, a friendly reminder that one like equals one pat for my little buddy Doug here. Say hi, Doug. Finally, want to mention if you enjoy any of the music in this video or just want to support the channel in general, it's all part of my royalty-free music label, Speakerhead Studios. All the music on this label is completely royalty-free, so go ahead and use it for any of your content creating needs. But now that we got all that out of the way, let's talk about this little Powerglide. And of course, to start this off, we're going to talk about his accessories. So to start off, he's going to come with his signature G1 blaster that's not painted at all but has a nice sculpt to it. The next accessory he's going to come with is the alien mask from the episode Hoist Goes to Hollywood, and that has a very nice sculpt and paint job to it. Then the final accessory he's going to come with is going to be this cool little flight stand. This accessory is pretty nice, but I do want to mention that some of the paint did actually wear off inside of the connection port. I don't think you'll have too much to worry about since the plastic underneath that part is red, but I do want to mention it. I also do want to mention be very careful when putting this into the port because of the paint job. It is a very tight connection. But now that we talked about accessories, let's move on to the actual figure. And to start off, we're going to talk about the overall sculpt of this figure. Now to start this off, we're going to do a quick 360, and I think this guy really cleans up very well. Newage definitely made sure that this guy looks good from every angle. But moving on to the fine details, starting with his head, I really love the face sculpt of this Powerglide. I know his face sculpt isn't anything crazy, but I think Newage did an excellent job with it as usual. Moving to the arms, they look pretty good, but the lower arms are a little thick. Talking about his chest, nothing crazy to talk about here, but it's nice and clean. Then a fun little Easter egg is if you flip up his chest, you can see the little heart from that one episode. Moving to the waist and lower legs, there's nothing crazy to talk about here, but it is nice and cleaned up. Finally, moving on to the lower legs and feet, it is probably the sloppiest part of the figure with all these panels, but overall it does clean up pretty well. And something I personally like about the lower legs is how the thrusters collapse into the sides of the legs. I just personally think it helps clean up the figure. But for the overall sculpt of this guy, I think Newage did an amazing job. It's just the spitting image of that character. Now that we're done talking about sculpt, let's move on to the paint job of this guy. So for the paint job of this guy, Newage did not slack one bit for this figure. Pretty much everything you see in this figure is painted except for a couple hinges in the metal parts. But getting into details, his head has a beautiful red paint job with a little bit of gray for that oval. And then his face is painted with some nice light grays and dark grays. Then finally the blue pearlescent paint job they use for a lot of their figures' eyes, which always looks amazing. Talking about the arms, they're completely painted with a nice gray paint job. Moving on to the torso and the wings, the only paint that's going to be on there is that beautiful red we already talked about before. Moving on to the waist, it's going to have that same nice red paint job, but then it's also going to have some nice yellow and blue details painted in there as well. Moving on to the upper legs, they're going to have a nice gray paint job to them except for the inner legs, which are going to be painted red for the alt mode. Then finally moving on to the lower legs and feet, the only paint that's going to be on there is that beautiful red we already talked about. So even though there aren't too many different colors going on with this guy is completely painted head to toe, which looks amazing. So now that we talked about the paint job of this guy, let's move on to the posability of this figure. Starting with his head, the only movement you're going to have is going to be a left and right movement. Moving on to his arms, they can go all the way out to the side and all the way around, no problem. Moving down on the arms, he has a bicep swivel and an elbow bend that can get you more than 90 degrees. Moving to his waist, he has an ab crunch that can go both forward and back, and he has a waist swivel that can go all the way around, no problem. Moving to his legs, before we get into articulation, I want to mention that mine are super tight to move, but I am able to move them, but that's just something I do want to let you know about. But for leg articulation, they can go all the way forward, none at all backwards, and all the way out to the side. Moving to his knees on a single hinge that can get a 90-degree bend. Then moving to his feet, he has a toe and ankle tilt down, a very minor toe tilt up, and an ankle rocker. So his articulation overall is pretty good, but there are some spots that I wish were a little better, such as his head articulation. But now that we're all done with posability, let's move on to the transformation of this little guy. And when I got this Powerglide, I was super excited to transform him right away. My KO DX9 Powerglide was always super fun to transform, so I was really excited to finally have a legend scale of Powerglide to transform. And just like his larger counterpart, this guy is also really fun to transform. And the overall transformation for him is pretty easy as well. I only had to look the instructions for one part because I had the legs flipped the wrong way, but overall I was able to figure it out by myself. And I consider myself pretty bad when it comes to transformations, so if I can do it, most other people can probably do it as well. Like I was saying, there's a lot of parts on the legs you have to flip back and forth, but once you do it a few times, it becomes pretty easy. And then I'd say honestly the most annoying part about this transformation is lining up the little thrusters so they're straight. But once you transform it turns out to be a fantastic little alt mode. And I'm also super happy about the flight stand because that really just looks awesome. So now talking about his alt mode, I absolutely love this alt mode. I'll admit there is a major flaw with it, and that it's not able to actually sit flat in alt mode. I wish they added something that could stick out and make it sit flat, but unfortunately you can't. You can keep it on the flight stand, but like I said before, some of the paint rubbed off on mine, so that might end up happening to yours, so just be aware of that as well. But if you don't mind a little bit of paint rubbing on the peg, it is an amazing alt mode to have on that flight stand. Just like most New Age figures, I think this is where the paint job really shines. The red paint New Age uses on their figures looks amazing, and this guy really just shows it off. Besides the red paint, I do like the tiny transparent cockpit that looks really nice as well. And then I really like how they really keep the alt mode of this guy slimmed down. However, he does have exposed hands in alt mode, which honestly does look pretty ugly. I wish that New Age was able to do something about those and hide them a bit better. But besides that nitpick, I think this alt mode looks fantastic. But now that we're done talking about alt mode, let's talk about my final thoughts for this little Powerglide. So when it comes to my final thoughts, I think this guy is a really fantastic figure. For starters, just like many other New Age figures, the paint job on this guy is just absolutely stellar. And then on top of that, New Age just really nailed the sculpt of this figure where it looks nice and clean. And then I also like the fact that the port for his flight stand can be used in both his robot mode and alt mode. And then talking about his alt mode, I absolutely love his alt mode. It looks fantastic. Even though I've only had him for a little bit, I know I'm going to be messing with his alt mode a lot more in the future. Then finally going back to the bot mode again, I think his posability is pretty solid for how small of a figure he is. So when it comes to my recommendation, I highly recommend picking this guy up because you'll absolutely enjoy him. I'm so far having a blast with him, and I know I'll be messing with him a lot more in the future. But guys, that's going to be my final thoughts on New Age Powerglide. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know if you already have him or if you plan on picking him up. But once again, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. And finally, once again, if you enjoyed any of the music in this video or just want to support the channel in general, it's all part of my royalty-free music label, Speakerhead Studios, link in the description. But guys, that's going to be it for me. I appreciate you checking out the video, and I'll catch all y'all in the next one. Peace!